You're listening to Stephanie and Fox, where we aim to educate, enlighten, and evolve your intimacy.
You can find us at evolveyourintimacy.com to learn more about counseling, self-study courses, intimacy, sex education, and the retreats that we provide.
This show contains discussions about relationships, intimacy, and sex, and is meant for those that are 18 years and older.
Now sit back, relax, listen up, and get ready to evolve your intimacy. Hey guys, this is Stephanie, and I am coming to you tonight loud and proud, and I have a few questions for you. Are you insecure about expressing yourself in a sexual setting? Have you ever experienced shame or embarrassment around sex, emotional intimacy, or your own body when you were growing up? Have you had that negative experience with your body or in sex that have impacted how much or how you view yourself, right? Many of us carry these negative expressions and judgments about ourselves and others in a way that interferes with the kind of fulfilling and connecting intimacy that we want. Today, we have the pleasure of interviewing a trailblazer in the field of sex, sexuality, and all things sex, Dr. Jenn Gunsaullus. She is a sociologist and author of the amazing book, From Madness to Mindfulness, Reinventing Sex for Women. Dr. Jenn has been in private practice as an intimacy and relationship coach for over 14 years. She has a segment called In the Den with Dr. Jenn, kind of catchy, educational video series, and has 1.7 million hits on YouTube. She's an international speaker on topics such as sexual consent, body image, erotic play, women's empowerment, mindfulness, intimacy, and so much more. Guys, this is who I want to be when I grow up, right? And I'm so excited to hear all about this. But first, let us take a quick commercial break. Ladies, are you ready to take your intimacy to the next level? Head over to our website to find out about relationship, intimacy, and sex counseling.
And gentlemen, are you needing a little bit more? Join us at stephanieandfox.com to learn tips on how to communicate with that special someone and ignite that flame.
Now, let's get back to the show. All right, and we are back, and this is Evolve Your Intimacy podcast. I am Stephanie from Evolve Your Intimacy, and I am talking with Dr. Jenn about how we can turn our sexual madness into sexual mindfulness. Dr. Jenn, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it.
I messed up quite a bit, but that's okay. I mean, I'm from Texas. I got that.
Like I said, this stuff is a lot harder to do than it looks, so I know it.
It really is. So what got you interested in sex, sexuality, and all of that fun stuff, that passion of yours?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I grew up in a small town in the suburbs of Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, and I was raised Catholic. And we didn't talk about sex. And there was just definitely a heaviness around it and a silence around it. It was just something that wasn't really talked about in the household at all. And then certainly I learned some things through church teachings, just around some guilt and shame, and certainly around women's bodies and such. And so, I went to college and started studying sociology and taking some women's studies classes and philosophy classes and law and legal institutions, and just really started, really seeing how much shame and embarrassment is misinformation is there around sexual topics and women's bodies and equality. And then my sophomore year, my roommate became a sexual health peer educator. So those are the folks who go around to the dorms, you do condom demonstrations and safer sex talks. And I was like, well, she was having fun with this. I was like, wow, you get to talk about sex. Like, that's fun. And then you also get public speaking skills. And at the time I was just so nervous, like our oral presentations we had to do at the end of each semester. It was just terrifying. And I figured, well, if you could talk about sex in front of people, you could probably talk about anything. And that is really true. So that was like 28 years ago at this point that I started doing sex education in that way, specifically with public speaking and teaching college students, and then just became really fascinated about how people make decisions around sex. Their lack of decision-making around sex.
Absolutely.
The shame, the embarrassment, the fear-based approaches that weren't really working and definitely weren't empowering women. Gender power dynamics and how we're socialized around these topics to believe what's natural and normal. Yeah. So yeah, and then went on and, got my PhD in sociology and started delving into these topics from all different angles.
So you've worked everywhere. I mean, I was looking on your website. There's pretty much nothing that you haven't touched. I mean, you're everywhere.
It is funny when I was thinking about over the year. I mean, I've been hustling. Like I've been hustling, frankly, to figure out how to make a financially stable career out of a topic that people say they love and say sex sells, but not in this version of it where I'm helping people look at their, deepest insecurities and fears and shame and like helping them be vulnerable and authentic and connect better. Like it's hard work. Absolutely. And so, so I have hustled over the years. Yeah, I've talked to, senior citizens. I worked at the LGBT Community Center for a while doing HIV prevention. College students. I've been hired by moms to talk to their teenage girls about, compassion and collaboration and consent. And now I'm like really finally speaking to international audiences. I just came back from a European speaking tour in Geneva, London, and Paris, speaking to groups there. I'm talking to some folks in India, and it looks like this fall I'm going to go to India and speak to folks there on these topics, like doing couples intimacy events. So yeah, it's just, I've been at it for a long time.
Well, I completely appreciate your trailblazing, honestly, in this field, because no one really wants to talk about it, but everybody wants to have it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, except for many women in long-term relationships, unfortunately, who then don't want to have it anymore and are struggling with low desire. And that's a whole can of worms in and of itself.
Absolutely. I completely agree. So in your video series, In the Den with Dr. Jenn, it's extremely popular and it's very successful on YouTube. I love that. I can tell you've been hustling. Can you share just a little bit more about the series and what your motivation was behind starting it?
Yeah, this was actually, I haven't been creating new videos for that in a while, but it was a specific, I went to a studio in downtown San Diego. We shot in front of a live studio audience. Awesome. We called it, once a month, we'd shoot a bunch of episodes. So, what it ended up being is just a way, this was back in 2006, before podcasting was a thing, and video podcasting certainly wasn't, and YouTube was really just sketchy ass. And we were creating high quality, high definition videos very early on, around sexual topics, and me specifically around female sexual empowerment. And I found some guys who were, in the tech realm and interested in these topics and supporting women. And so, we would, we would put these short videos together, and then I started interviewing folks. And it was all just a way of using modern current technology, and to educate people around everything from tantra to female ejaculation to the female condom to massage techniques to using acupuncture for fertility. And the list goes on. So yeah, there's a lot of material out there, of folks I've interviewed over the years. You said acupuncture for fertility and my mind just went, but well, that's something that I think is amazing. Yeah. One of the other many things you do is you conduct sessions where you teach meditative and mindful masturbation for women. What is meditative? Well, okay, so I actually don't teach sessions on that. However, I have a free audio. But like a 10-minute audio that is specifically for women who carry shame and embarrassment around touching their bodies, and giving themselves pleasure. So it walks through by applying mindfulness in terms of paying attention to your five senses in the moment, in terms of creating like a safe space, safe, warm, comfortable space for yourself, of noticing if you're judging yourself or feeling shame and catching that and choosing just to shift back to taking care of yourself. And so a short guided meditation to help women touch themselves, and hopefully drop into pleasure. And I've gotten great feedback over the years from that. Women are like, oh my God, this totally helped me. And then it just moves in just to some nice music for them to listen to. So, I haven't ever done that in person. That's one realm I haven't moved into, but it's a free file out there for, any women that want to listen to it that can help them overcome their shame and discomfort with their bodies.
being from the South, you mentioned earlier, I mean, you're not from the South, but me from the South.
Yeah.
I automatically, I think it's built in shame and guilt for sex. But you mentioned that as well for you. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I think there's aspects of it. I mean, it's still deep in the United States. I mean, side note, and then I'll come back to that question.
Sure.
You know what, I would say even when you see on social media that there's so much female sexual empowerment and body positivity and sex positivity, and it's fantastic. But it's often, I don't know, there's still something that can feel like a performance. That's not true vulnerability and authenticity. So even as we make progress around these topics of overcoming shame and embarrassment around sex for women, there's still, I don't know, we judge ourselves so much that our bodies don't look perfect. And then we need to be sexual in a certain way. Like we still, I don't know, it still ends up being kind of a performance and still based on us judging ourselves and never feeling quite right or not enough. So, and yeah, there's versions of that all around. So, you know, having grown up just not talking about sex topics, and having been raised with, Catholicism, and the guilt and shame around that, and just then not, it was just never sort of normalized as something that we talked about, and feeling like it's, you know, like pleasure is okay, desire is okay. You know, and basically all the lessons we ever got in sex education was just the responsibility aspect or condoms or anatomy, which is all super important, but not in the context of like, what is it to be afraid of being rejected? What is it to like somebody and want them to like you back? And do we do things sometimes that we regret? And what's different motivations between why teenage boys and teenage girls might want sex and what they're looking for? And all of those like socio-emotional cultural nuances, that are all of our lived experiences. Like we don't get much education around that. And then, you know, we falter and it's all through trial and error, and we hurt ourselves or we hurt others along the way. Mm-hmm. So, I would say around our whole country, you know, there's still, versions of shame and guilt and heaviness and self-blame and self-worth issues.
So when you're working with a client who has religious shame, because I know our show hits a lot of listeners that have a lot, we get that people write in all the time, all of this religious shame and guilt. What do you say to them? How do you help them break out just a little of their shell?
Yeah, so this is where I really bring in mindful intimacy, and like all the topics of my book are all about this, of realizing that. Just a minute, I'm so excited. Of looking at, so like if we were to take shame specifically, and if I was to work with a woman and she goes, yeah, every time my husband brings up trying something new sexually, let's say, I just shut down the conversation, you know, and that would be a place to look at then and look at it in terms of, okay, I would start with what stories is she telling herself? What are her beliefs about this? What are her beliefs about why that's wrong or why that's uncomfortable? What did she learn growing up? And then I'd go into like, what emotions are you feeling? You feeling embarrassment? You feeling shame? You feeling humiliation? You feeling fear? Fear of disappointing a partner, all those things. And then this is where it really drops in. Where do you feel that inside of you? Because like shame feels awful. We feel it in our chest and our solar plexus and up to our face. And it is such a physiologically uncomfortable feeling that we generally want to bury our heads in the sand and just avoid it. So often if we feel shame, what folks do is either we emotionally retreat and avoid a situation, or we lash out at the person and blame them for us feeling bad. And then we judge them. Or we want to like numb ourselves through alcohol or drugs, or we want to just distract ourselves like through social media or Netflix or something. So, at the core of being able to move through shame is you need to be able to identify it and stay present with it and feel all of that ickiness and break apart the story from the emotions, from the physical sensations. And even like, if you just do that for 10 seconds, you now have 10 seconds that you've broken some sort of automatic pattern in your brain that wants to shut down around shame. And that is at the core of emotional resilience. where you could stay present with uncomfortable things and then start to make new, healthier choices for yourself. So that's kind of the structure that I use to break down something like that. And then it's literally physiologically learning how to get comfortable with discomfort.
Sitting in the suck. That's what I always say.
Sitting in the suck. There you go.
You gotta sit in the suck. And so let's say that they're experiencing stomach issues, or even what I find is irritable bowel, or they have some sort of upset stomach and I feel like it all stems from their shame from sex and embarrassment about themselves and not accepting themselves.
That stuff can, for sure. And that's a whole nother level when it surfaces as actual physiological, like physical ailments. Mm-hmm. I'm even just talking about just that, if you were, like most people, if I told them, hey, you need to go on stage in 5 minutes and talk to 500 people, most people will get those awful butterflies in their solar plexus. Or if you think your partner may be cheating on you, you might get a dropping feeling in your belly, or jealousy can feel like nausea in your belly. Or over the years, I've worked with women who literally have trouble speaking their truth with their partner. They literally, when they attune to it, they notice it as a feeling of constriction in their throat. So so I'm not even, the actual physical ailment, that's a whole nother level of psychosomatic stuff that it can surface in our body, especially around gut stuff. But I'm not even getting to that point. Yeah. I'm just talking about icky sensations inside of us, which is a lot of, bodily wisdom that's there, but we're just, it's often so uncomfortable. We don't know how to stay with it and use it as the wisdom that it is.
And the constricting in your throat, what does that tell you as a counselor?
It's interesting to me that they literally feel like they're stopping themselves from speaking, and they literally then notice that they feel that constriction in their throat. So, and I think for many women, we're not taught to speak our truths. And this is changing in our society some, but certainly a lot of girls grow up with be quiet, don't rock the boat, be nice, put the needs of others first, be of service, which are those aren't all bad things, but they need to be balanced with speak your truth, know yourself, know you have a right to boundaries and needs, and you have a right to ask for these things and talk about them.
Giving somebody the permission to actually feel these feelings and tell them that they have the right to feel them. And I mean, ladies in particular, that is another powerful thing in itself. And there are so many times that women in my office, and I'm sure you've experienced the same, they're just no one's ever told me that. And it's such simple stuff that no one's ever told me that I had a choice to say no. No one's ever told me that I can say, or I don't want to hug that uncle who makes me feel creepy. Oh, Yeah. And so it extends not just through your sexuality, but your body will tell you what you don't like and what you do like and what's good for you, what's bad for you. And that dropping stomach feeling, man, when you said that, I kind of felt it already. I was been there, done that. Yeah.
And it's permission for women. And permission is such a good word to use, Stephanie. It's permission to feel what you're feeling. And then it's permission then to advocate for yourself. It's agency that you have the belief in yourself that you have a right to speak up for yourself and stand up for yourself. And that you are able to do it and that others should respect that and listen to that. So there's a lot of levels to sexual agency, and bodily agency in that way that we're just still generally not taught.
Not at all. And the world of TikTok drives me crazy sometimes, but there is such positive, there are such positive messages going around, body positivity. I see dads teaching their little girls, you don't have to hug Uncle
so good.
Uncle Ned, and it's teaching them, but starting from right from birth, give them the right to say no. And I think that was something that was removed from me and my ability. I was never able to say no. I was always made to go give him a hug, or, you better give him a kiss, or that. Yeah. Or, I know. Give me a kiss or I'm going to take it, and that mentality.
Oh, that's so uncomfortable. Yeah. Yeah, and this is something that I like when I am working with adults, like couples, but then often in the Q&A, they want to ask about like, how do we talk about these topics with our kids? And that is the very first place I start. I go, you start as soon as you're interacting with them and they can discern. Do they want a hug? Do they want a kiss? Do they want a handshake? Do they want a high five? Do they want physical contact or not? And teaching, like at that level, like if at age 3 and 4, you're starting to discern, oh, what do I want and not want? First of all, like that level of self-attunement to your needs and wants. And then second of all, knowing you have a right to then voice that and articulate that. And then third, then that it should be respected by others. Like that's it. We would not have any of the consent issues that we have if that was normalized, because then of course you would respect that in others as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is some really great information, and we'll be right back with Dr. Jenn talking about how we can turn our sexual madness into sexual mindfulness right after this commercial break.
Are you interested in learning more about the topics we discuss on our show? Head over to ASN Lifestyle Magazine, where you can read all the articles we publish about relationships, intimacy, and sex. When it comes to the lifestyle and adult industry magazines, look no further than ASN Lifestyle Magazine. They are the natural go-to everything lifestyle and adult content related. Get your free digital issue today at asnlifestylemagazine.com.
We are back. This is the Evolve Your Intimacy podcast, and I'm Stephanie from Evolve Your Intimacy, talking with Dr. Jenn about how we can turn our sexual madness into sexual mindfulness. Now, Dr. Jenn, your book, I've been waiting for this. I was so excited earlier. Your book, From Madness to Mindfulness, Reinventing Sex for Women. It speaks to women who may be in a state of sexual madness. What is madness?
Yeah, well, I like the alliteration with madness to mindfulness. So that's where that came from, because I knew the book was going to be on mindfulness. But what I'm calling madness is this idea that, for many girls and women in our society that we've experienced and are still experiencing, you grow up learning that some of these things I've said already, that like, our bodies are never good enough looking, that, our value is in how we appear to others and in our weight, that we're not taught that we have a clitoris, and that it's the seat of pleasure for many women. So many young women fake orgasm, and that's normal. So many aspects of heterosexual sexual interactions have coercive aspects. Mental, emotional, physical coercion that are just normal aspects of those interactions. And then you put on top of it a lot of the moral and or religious teachings that you should not be sexual before you're married, that women's pleasure is something to be embarrassed about, or women's desire is something to be controlled and embarrassed about. And then you get all of those messages, all this body, sex, negativity, shame messages. And then, you're supposed to get married and then just flip a switch and suddenly be this amazing, passionate, open, exploratory sexual being with your husband in this, traditional realm of what it's supposed to be. Like, that's madness. That's literally insanity. And there is nothing in how our brain wiring works that works that way. You don't wire a brain with messages around deep emotions and self-worth and sexual expression and body image topics over and over again, and then suddenly unwire all of that to the exact opposite. Like, that's insane. Yeah. And then women think there's something wrong with them, and women think they're broken in some way, and blame themselves. So that is all of what I call, this is madness. This is insanity. Of course. I mean, it is the rare woman who makes it to adulthood who is like truly sexually expressed and authentic without shame and with total comfort and hasn't been abused or coerced in some way. So that's madness. Yeah.
I like how you said coerced or abused, because that is the core of our, unfortunately, I guess our livelihood. I mean, it's just in some way, every woman, I feel like, has been sexualized, and we're grown into that, and we're conditioned to feel like that's normal. And so, again, giving permission to them and saying that's not normal, you don't have to do that, is really breaking the madness. So how can they break the madness and turn it into mindfulness?
Well, a couple of things. So the first is just realizing everything that I just said. Like, I have a whole chapter in my book that I actually cite a lot of really interesting research. Mm-hmm. And the whole point of it is being like, you might think you're unique in a negative way or that there's something wrong with you. You're not. Like, this is literally how our society is structured around these topics. And I point to interesting research around pornography and around orgasm and gender role socialization and topics like that. Just so women know, like, you are normal. Like, you're absolutely, if you're struggling with any of these things, you are absolutely normal. And it's not your fault. Like, we are all the product of our society. But now that you see that and recognize it, okay, what can you do now? How can you step up and have the courage to be vulnerable in new ways? And then that then moves into what I was already saying, like that example about a woman who feels shame. Like, okay, look at those three components. Look at your interpretations. Like, what stories are you telling yourself? What stories have you been told that you've inherited that have become your truth, but are not serving you and are actually undermining you? And so get detailed on all of that. Look at all the different emotional components, and then look at where it lives inside you, where you literally feel it inside of you. And these things they feel icky. And we carry a lot of just limiting beliefs about ourselves. So, and that's just the basis of it. And doing a mindfulness process of that, of learning to stay present and notice all of the things that you're feeling inside, and how you're making sense of it. And then you get to start rewiring yourself bit by bit. And then, like in my book, then I apply that to relationship communication and having difficult conversations. I talk about it in terms of passion and desire and sexual expression and thinking outside the box and creativity. And then also with body image and how it's just insidious. And we are all in ever aging bodies. And we're so much of women's time and energy, we're taught to spend it and money on trying to keep us younger and more beautiful looking, and these just impossible standards. So, and then I have a chapter all about how do we stop passing this on to the younger generations of women? How can we step up and be responsible in new ways and stop these cycles around this madness? And then there's a whole bunch of different coaching exercises people can do to put this into action.
Well, I want to get to that, but yeah. I want to kind of back up just a little bit. You were talking about, or actually, I mean, you have a course around, I'm not sure if it's yours, but I think it is, rewriting your sexual stories.
Yeah, that's mine. Yes. Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So it's basic, everything that I've just talked about here. It's like a live workshop I've given before in person and over Zoom. And then I ended up turning it into an online course that folks can buy so they can go through it themselves, of watching the videos and the slides and doing exercises. And it's a lot of what I just said, but it's really personalized then, of how, and it's for anybody, male, female, gender, non-binary, anybody can take it and look at like what stories have they inherited from their family, from their society, from their past negative experiences that have become their truth around their sexual experiences and around their emotional intimacy and or a fear of vulnerability. And, how do we pull them apart and realizing like somebody wrote that story for you and then you wrote it for yourself. Mm-hmm. Like that means you can start rewriting a new story for yourself. Because that is just one version of the truth, and there are many versions of the truth. So let's start writing one that really serves us and creating a new path forward, and then literally creating those neuro pathways in our brains around this. So it's a really neat workshop. It's a really neat process to guide folks through.
You keep saying stories, and I know that there are listeners going, okay, give me an example. What do you mean?
Oh, yeah. I mean, a story could be as simple as the first time you have sex and, say you're a female and you're heterosexual and a guy comments on your pubic hair. Mm-hmm. And then that becomes part of your story of how you view yourself as a sexual woman, that you're like, pubic hair is gross. Men hate pubic hair. I need to remove it all, or they're going to think I'm gross. Or, you see a picture in pornography, maybe you see a picture of a vulva and you're like, you think that's what all vulvas look like. And then you're like, my hanging vulva pieces don't look like that. And then you tell yourself a story, but based on what you've been presented in society, you tell yourself a story that your vulva's ugly and that it's wrong and misshapen and that it's disgusting to other people and they're going to judge you for it. Because we don't talk openly and frankly and in really detailed, nuanced ways about all different components of sex and emotions, we then get little negative experiences that are uncomfortable. And then we turn them into stories, or other people literally tell us the stories. Like, Catholicism and through religion, we get stories like, oh, if you've done something sexual, if you desire these things, like you are a bad person, you are immoral. So they can be told to us as full stories, or we have little, experiences that then we turn into stories that then here we are 20 years later, still carrying it forward and don't even realize it's a story that can be rewritten.
How do we break that cycle with our young children?
Some of it is, it depends on age appropriate, but certainly when they start becoming teenagers, at least share some of this. Like, hey, I grew up learning this and that did a number on my psyche. And I don't want you to have the same thing. Now, you always want to balance because you don't want to impose all your stuff on them, but those are certain places for some vulnerability. And to me, actually, there's so much media between Netflix streaming shows and music videos and music lyrics and video games and social media feeds, Instagram, etc. Use those as teaching moments. Just be like, hey, I saw you and your friends were looking at Kylie Jenner's Instagram feed. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I was looking at, what do you think? What do you think of this picture? Have sort of ongoing inquiry for them to learn critical thinking skills. Like, who do you think benefits from this? How does it make you feel to look at it? I heard your girlfriend so-and-so said this, what does she think? Or, if you're watching Stranger Things together and there's a kiss or something like that, you'd be like, are many of your friends kissing yet? I know. And you could say, I know this is awkward to talk about, but I didn't talk about it growing up with my family. And I know that wasn't good for me. And I really love and care about you. So every so often we're going to have an awkward 5-minute conversation. So, there's stuff around us constantly, and it's spending time with your kids and consuming some of those things together and then using them as teaching moments, but also more so just using them as moments to facilitate their reflection on these topics. And that you are a safe person to talk to. You're not going to judge them or shame them.
So good. I got a text message from my 7-year-old niece, and she had drawn a penis on her brother's back while he slept. And I was dumbfounded. I mean, how do you know what that is? You're 7. And it's
seriously.
But she drew it anatomically correct. And so I was more impressed with that. But, and I don't know where she heard that from. I don't know where she saw that, but it starts so young.
Well, and what was her reason for doing that? And how did he then feel about it?
Well, she thought that it was hilarious. And she sent me pictures, and then she drew just stuff coming. It looked like it was ejaculating. And I'm like, how do you know this?
I don't think she knows what that means.
I don't either. I don't either, but she's seen it somewhere. Somewhere she's seen it. And so I want to have that conversation, but it's not my place to, because, my family is we'll talk about that when we're ready, or we don't talk about that at all.
Oh,
so,
geez.
But yeah, and my nephew, he thought it was hilarious. He was showing all of his friends, look what my sister did. And I'm just like, okay.
That could have played out in a much worse way. But the interesting thing is, so none of the adults will want to talk to them about, hey, so where'd you learn to do this? That's a pretty good drawing. Where'd you learn to do that? Do you know what this is? And then you answer questions in age appropriate ways, because basically 7-year-old girls, hopefully they do not know what ejaculating penis is, because that is definitely too early to know those specifics.
Sure.
You want to know body changes and things like that, and maybe erect penises, but you don't need to know details yet in that way.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
I'm just convinced. I know she saw it somewhere, and
she had to. Yeah. But I mean, that's funny that she thought it was hysterical.
She FaceTimed me to show me.
Oh, she was like so proud of it.
Very proud of herself. So,
oh, that's very funny.
I mean, I'm just going to let her have it, but I'm still wondering why. I'll have that conversation this summer when I get her. But I like how, it is up to us to rewrite those stories for our children and not to feel that shame for ourselves and not to be embarrassed about it, but actually say, this is kind of hard for me to talk about because it was never talked about with me. And, I'm 40 years old. I don't know how to talk about it either. So do you want to sit down and how can we have this conversation and bring it up? But, it's so important that we rewrite them because we don't want to continue the cycle of abuse and sexualization and all of the fun things that, we go through as humans.
Yeah. And then for many men being the ones that are abusing and sexualizing and not even realizing that there's another way of doing it. Or that they're doing anything wrong or that it's harmful what they're doing. Yeah.
And what are some ways that men unknowingly harm their female friends or children or kids, male, female, non-binary, whoever? What are some of those examples?
Yeah. I mean, because I've over the years in my personal experiences and professional experiences, I know so often men are doing harmful things, but they're like good guys.
Yeah.
They're kind men. They're good men. They're respectful men. They just literally don't even know what they're doing is harmful or problematic. And they don't know there's another way. So, I mean, there's all different aspects of what I call sexual coercion, which is guilting somebody, making them feel guilty. The whole I got blue balls. Somebody needs to take care of this, or, it's been a long time, or college students sometimes can use the threat of social shame. Well, I'm going to tell everybody that you did this or you didn't do this or whatever. The repeated asking that if somebody has, moved your hand away or said, no, or expressed lack of interest to keep coming back to it and coming back to it. Because the number of most women I talk to, they're like, I just gave in. And I was like, and I would think most young men and adult men don't want to be having sexual encounter with a woman who actually isn't really want to do it, that she just gives in because she got tired of saying no, and that doesn't mean she might not experience some sexual pleasure in all of it, but it wasn't intentionally, consensual. Yes. And her mind and her heart and body weren't all in it. The joking, blocking, a woman from leaving a room in a joking way if she said no. You said the uncle that's like, give me a kiss or I'm going to steal one from you. That type of stuff. Oh, that one makes my heart ache. That just feels so icky inside. And so inappropriate, but something that's such a common joking thing. And then if you're the young woman or woman who stands up against it, it's like, well, I was just joking. Exactly. Don't make such a big deal. It's turned against us. So we're really, really taught not to know our feelings, accept our feelings, and put the boundaries up and have them respected, because then it still gets turned around against us. So, I mean, all of that are aspects of sexual coercion that are super common. Yeah. Super common. And bit by bit sort of undermine women's sense of self and being able to make choices for themselves.
I am learning so much from you. I'm fangirling over here. And I hope all the listeners are too. So we need to take a short commercial break and we will be right back. And when we come back, we are going to be talking about self-love and sexual desire and how to reclaim that. Ladies, are you ready to take your intimacy to the next level? Head over to our website to find out about relationship, intimacy, and sex counseling.
And gentlemen, are you needing a little bit more? Join us at stephanieandfox.com to learn tips on how to communicate with that special someone and ignite that flame.
Now, let's get back to the show. All right, we are back, and this is Evolve Your Intimacy. I'm Stephanie from Evolve Your Intimacy, talking with Dr. Jenn about how we can turn our sexual madness into sexual mindfulness. And now I really want to talk about how we can increase sexual desire, because it's not uncommon for women to lose our sex drive or for it to decrease as we get older. So Dr. Jenn, what are some of the ways that we can increase sexual desire and sex drive, especially for women in their 40s and over?
Yeah.
Or women in long-term relationships?
Yeah. And this is a tough topic. It's a complicated topic. We don't understand desire well, and like with the hormones and the neurochemicals, because if we did, we know the pharmaceuticals companies would have a pill for it.
Absolutely.
And they've tried various pills, but they really don't impact desire as much as they've have different ones out on the market and are trying. So it's, versus like Viagra is for arousal.
Mm-hmm.
But desire is a whole different thing. And it's neurochemicals that we don't understand well. And especially for women, desire is about, like, we think of desire as like that sort of like bodily, like yearning, wanting, like in your crotch.
Yeah.
Such a bad word, crotch. It's like a ridiculous sounding word. Groin? I don't know. But it is. It's like, it's that area, and it's just you yearn, and maybe you feel it up in your heart. And that's, there's very specific neurochemical cocktail that we have, that most of us all have in early relationships around lust and love. And that, when you put folks early in a relationship in like an fMRI scan,
mm-hmm.
and you have them look at a picture of their loved one, the areas of the brain that light up are about newness and mystery and excitement. And then you take somebody who's been in a relationship for 5 years or something like that and looks at a photo, and it's very different areas of the brain that light up. It's about stability and trust and predictability, all the opposite of passion. And so it's really common to not have that same desire level, because it's like physiologically we're wired that way. And I think more so for women in long-term relationships than men, and the research shows that. I've certainly seen it in my private practice, although I have seen men
mm-hmm.
Who struggle with low desire in long-term relationships as well. So desire, first of all, know you're normal. Like, it's a very normal thing. It doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're not attracted to your partner. It doesn't mean you're not in love with your partner. Because I know folks that have truly fantastic relationships that are great parents. They love their family. They love their lifestyle. They work well together. But one of them just does not have that yearning or desire anymore. And then that person feels guilty. And then often the man feels rejected or feels not attractive. And then we're not taught how to handle that with grace and ease and effectiveness. And it starts to undermine the relationship, and everybody feels bad. So, so there's a couple places to start. First of all, just with normalizing that. And then for, say, if you're a woman with low desire, looking at when do you feel horny? Are there certain times of the month or certain circumstances? And how do you intentionally cultivate more of those? I also look at, how do you prime your own pump in terms of, like, if you, I've got the hand motion.
I know.
They can't see.
We both speak with our hands, and I love this.
Yeah. How, what does give you a little sexual spark? I think as women, we are taught that maybe our sexual desire and our arousal is someone else's responsibility. And if it's not happening anymore, well, what can you do to take responsibility for yourself? And maybe that's reading erotic stories where, oh my God, there are so many great audio erotic apps now that you got a 20-minute drive home from work and you can listen to an erotic story that's well done, that's romantic, that has good acting, good sound effects. And like you get into that and like you get your juices pumping. So that's a really great way of using modern technology of something, and find stories that are kind of hot for you. And then also your partner. What's your partner doing that's like pushing your brakes in terms of your sexual desire? And how do you work as a team, start creating some new contexts that can facilitate, sexual desire? Also, we often think that desire has to come first, and then bodily arousal comes, and then climax, pleasure, orgasm, whatever. And for many women in long-term relationships, I suggest that they switch arousal and desire. And how can they get comfortable in their body and get their body starting to get turned on? And whether it's kissing a partner and doing things that feel safe initially and getting them out of their heads and present in their bodies. It could be them on their own, pulling out a vibrator, just touching themselves. what it is, how can you get your body aroused sexually, and then the desire kicks in, and then the desire feeds the arousal, and it becomes a nice, positive loop in that way. So, and then there's so many other factors. If your partner expresses anger towards you a lot, that is scary. I think this is like sort of evolutionarily built into women, that if somebody is expressing anger and like that, and that feels like danger inside of our bodies, like the last thing you should do is open your legs to that person. Like that's legit danger. And so I actually think that there's a reason. If somebody's like, we close in and we like, that is not aiding in desire. Resentments overall, if you feel not loved or seen or prioritized or important, if you're not getting the quality time and like the emotional connection that you need with your partner. So there's lots of activities around that I help couples do to facilitate that she's feeling seen and heard and important and comfortable and open, and then wants to, open her legs. Body image is another topic that's huge. Because we could just kind of want to hide out in our, especially after COVID times and stuff.
Oh yeah.
After pregnancy and childbirth, and now your body is really there to serve another purpose, to keep your babies alive. There's just so many shifts in that way about how we feel about our bodies, how we view our bodies and experience them. So, and all of this stuff is connected to desire, and just knowing that under that underlying aspect of, your physiological desire may have just naturally dropped off. So what is it then to not count on that, and start being intentional in new ways, and know that it's not going to be maybe flash in the pan, stir fry, hot porn sex like early on, but it's going to be this slow simmer, emotional intimacy, building pleasure, and redefining what a good sex life looks like at your current age and state of your body.
So what do you say to the women who don't want to have sex anymore and they're done?
Yeah, well, the question is why?
Yeah.
Because I get it for sure. Because I know some women actually too, their kids are out of the house. They've gone to college. They're in their 50s. Them and their husband don't have much in common anymore and don't really like each other. They get divorced and the woman's like, I am happy never having sex again. I am fine with that. So I mean, to me, that's just and which is, sorry, you might hear a dog barking in the background here. I don't want anybody to ever have to feel like they have to be sexual to be happy and healthy. Cause that's not the case for everybody. So, but I would look at, have they had negative experiences? What are their body changes? If they've gone through menopause, what's going on? What is their relationship to their body? Do they miss any aspects of it? Are they interested in even masturbating? So whether they're single or in partnership, there's still a lot of questions to ask. I come in as a sociologist and as a mindfulness facilitator for them to get in touch with like, what's the truth underlying all of this? Is that an authentic decision they've made for themselves, or is it just reactive from a lot of pain and hurt and disappointment and body changes over the years?
So as we begin to wrap up with you, I could keep you forever. What do you think the current perception of female sexuality in American society is? And do you think we're moving forward, in your opinion? And what work do we have left to do? I mean,
that's a good question. Yeah, honestly, I think that answer really depends on the age of the person and the location in the country. Maybe also like their sexual orientation and their race also. Like there's so much demographic variation in how sex plays out. But I mean, we have greater awareness around consent. We have greater awareness around women's pleasure. We have a plethora of vibrators designed for women's bodies and women's pleasure and their clitorises and such. So we've got a lot in the right direction. I just feel like, though, I could go to a 60-year-old woman and I could go to an 18-year-old college young woman, and I feel like they're still going to have a number of the same insecurities or or something. And the 80-year-old woman from what she grew up with all those decades ago, and the 18-year-old just from current standards of fear of vulnerability and judgment of her body and thinking that she needs to perform like in pornography to please her partner, which is rather disembodied sex, especially for young women. So we continue to make progress. We continue to have more choices and acceptance and tolerance, which is fantastic. But
there's the but.
I don't know that I would say many young women are having still what I would call empowered, liberated, authentic, open-hearted, pleasurable sexual encounters. All the whole thing. I feel like we've moved away from the emotional piece too much. Almost like it's vulnerable and therefore awkward and uncomfortable and embarrassing to feel emotions and caring. You don't want to catch feelings. Like that's not making, I don't think that's making most women happy. And that's not honoring the full, sex is freaking intimate.
Yeah.
And to numb yourself from that or pretend you shouldn't care. No, do the opposite. It's okay if you care. And then we can make healthier choices for yourself. But I know like sort of college culture around it is sort of set up to not. Everybody should be embarrassed about their emotions. And I'm like, no, we all have them. Let's normalize them.
Does.
Yeah, it's awkward for all of us.
You're not special. Trust me. It's awkward.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm ordering your book, and I would like for everybody who's listening to order From Madness to Mindfulness, Reinventing Sex for Women by Dr. Jennifer Gunsaullus. Her last name is spelled completely un-Texan, I can tell you that.
It's not. It's very weird.
So it's Gunsaullus, Gunsaullus. So definitely look that up, and everybody let's read it. We'll do a damn book study over it if we want to. I love it. So Dr. Jenn, what is your final word of advice for the listeners? What do you want them to walk away with tonight?
Yeah. First to know anything you're struggling with, you're not alone. Yeah. And if you're carrying, shame, and again, any gender that you are, we all have it in various ways, know that, you can make bit by bit new choices to face that head on, and move through it. And which then really opens up all these new possibilities for the depth of true intimacy and connections with other human beings that we're all looking for.
Wonderful set. Wonderfully. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, I thank you. And I am probably going to fangirl some more over you and read your book and then reach out to you and be like, tell me more. But I really appreciate you taking the time to join us and our listeners and help teach these women and men and non-binary that it's okay. You're okay. You're not, everybody's weird. We're all weird. Everybody's okay.
It's perfect. Exactly. We're all perfectly weird.
We're all perfectly messed up people. We're all in this together.
Oh, I love it.
Well, I appreciate you and thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I am just so blown away at this interview, at Dr. Jenn. She is one of the most prolific people in our industry, and you guys got the opportunity to hear from her right here on our show. And man, oh man, I am so excited that you were able to listen to her and learn. I learned a lot, and I hope you did too. So I want you to go to her website, check her out, and purchase her book. So let's support good people in the industry. And if you like what we do, you can go to our website, give us a thumbs up on any of the social media platforms. You can also vote for us in the ASN magazine, ASN Lifestyle magazine awards. And we're nominated for 6 categories. So you can go over there and take a look at that. And vote for us, if you like us, in Best Educator, Best New Business, Best Educator Website, Best Supporting Business, Best Entertainment Podcast, and Best Social Media Influencer. We absolutely love what we do. We are here for you guys, and I look forward to bringing you another wonderful show next week. See you later. Thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to our show. We are Stephanie and Fox with Evolve Your Intimacy. And remember, you're not in this alone, and we are here to help.
You can check us out at evolveyourintimacy.com, and if you subscribe to our newsletter, you will receive free resources monthly to help evolve your intimacy.
Have a good night.
Have a good one.